So welcome everybody. This is Mark Durgan, the project director for the Pennsylvania Care Partnership. And I think, Colleen, with that, I can turn it over to you to introduce Andrea, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Good morning, everyone. We're excited to have Andrea Dar from Handle with Care give a presentation about the program, how it's set up, and also the logistics involved. I did share with her that most of us on the call are the doers and the go-to people that would probably be the ones to bring this to our counties and probably be one of the leads in implementing it. So she is going to get into some of the logistics involved. And there will be an opportunity following her presentation to ask questions as well. So Andrea, thank you so much for being part of this call this morning.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me today. So Colleen, can you brief me real quickly on the audience that we're talking to today?
Sure. I know from, I don't know how the best way to do this, but most of the folks that were invited on the call were involved with the system of care to some extent. And Mark, if you want to, you kind of sent out the original invite. Who else would be the makeup of the group?
Sure. So yeah, a majority of the people in the call would be from system of care grants around the state. We currently have 5 up and running system of care grants that encompasses 43 or 44 out of the 67 counties. And then this is the part of our grant directors community of practice on mental health. So this can also include grants that are funded through SAMHSA for behavioral health, even some physical aspects to there, or a variety of other pieces.
Okay. That's super helpful. Thank you so much, Mark. I tell you what, I'm just going to start into my little presentation. And if you have any questions, do I have a chat box, Mark?
You do, and I'm monitoring that as we go. I think I saw one person was having a little chat. Oh, there's a little bit of a garble. So you might want to try calling in, and I'll post the number in the chat box for everybody.
Okay.
I'll keep a monitor on that for you.
Okay, I don't see the chat box, so feel free to ask questions as I go along. But what I wanted to do today is just talk to you a little bit about Handle with Care. I want to explain why we created the program, how we created the program, what it looks like for law enforcement, for schools, and for therapists. And also at the end, just kind of how to get it started in your community, sort of just a little step-by-step that we used to get it started in our community. So can everyone see my screen, I guess? Mark, you and Colleen see my screen. You all
correct.
See.
Yep.
Everything's good. Okay.
Facebook and your name.
Okay, good. So I put this slide up here because there's my contact information, and I want to make sure you all get to our website because our website has everything you need to implement a Handle with Care program. It's handlewithcarewv.org. If you don't go to the wv.org, you're not going to get there. So handlewithcarewv.org, and you can see that first little blue pull-down screen says Handle with Care. Just go there. It's got program overview, Handle with Care for law enforcement, for schools, for mental health providers, frequently asked questions, but it has everything that you'll need. And also there's training embedded in a lot of this. So there's different ways you can use this to train. Also like us on Facebook because we're constantly pushing out things that can help you in the field or events that are going on that you might want to attend. So handlewithcarewv.org. So West Virginia has about 1.8 million people. We have just under 380,000 children. We border 5 different states. It's a beautiful state, wonderful people, but we have a lot of issues in our state, which I'm sure are a lot like Pennsylvania. We're not alone in this fight. But these are sort of this slide is my ACEs of West Virginia. These are some of the things that we built the Handle with Care program around because these are the things that are affecting our kids. To me, what happened to us was a perfect storm of losing our coal jobs and pills coming into the state. It was just the perfect storm for it was just devastation. So, you know, when you lose your job, it's not just a paycheck. It's a sense of who you are and your purpose and your connection to your community. So we're losing all these coal jobs. In one of our southern counties, they've lost like 70% of their coal jobs in the last 5 years. While the jobs are going out, the pills are coming in. So the pills quickly turned into a heroin problem, fentanyl problem, and now we have a crystal methamphetamine problem, which I'm sure you all are seeing a lot of that too. 1 in 4 of our kids live below the federal poverty line. We have one of the highest rates of neonatal abstinence syndrome, and these babies are hitting the school system now, and they're hitting it hard. And you're more likely to get kicked out of a pre-K or a first grade than any other grades in our state. We lead the nation in removing kids, and these kids are coming into care much younger with much more complex emotional and behavioral problems. We're number 2 in the country for grandparents raising grandkids. Thank goodness for grandparents, but grandparents also have a lot of their own issues they're dealing with. Usually they have at least one chronic health condition, they're on a fixed income, and they need help in understanding how to navigate the criminal justice system, the school system, you know, how to work an iPad to help the kids with the homework. And all of these issues are creating this really high rate of transient displaced children. I see them, this is my personal view, I see them sort of in 3 groups. One group is the group that the kids get removed from their home because of abuse and neglect, and they get put in foster care, and the behaviors that kept them alive at home and surviving get them in trouble in foster care. They get kicked out of there and get put in group homes, often get kicked out because of their behaviors, and often end up with a charge, which is very easy because they're angry and they're hurt and they're lashing out. And they often end up in DJS custody, which is the last place we want a traumatized child. The second group is the group of kids that bounce from family member to family member and often end up with grandparents. And the last group are the kids that are just on nobody's radar. They're just couch surfing, going from sleeping wherever they can, and often get picked up in trafficking and exploitive situations. So all these are creating adverse or contributing to the adverse childhood experiences, and I'm sure many of you know all about this, so I'm not going to go into that. But what I do want to say is many of our children, the first week of life, already have 4 ACEs. They live in a, you know, they're born, they come home to a home with substance abuse, and you know child maltreatment, substance abuse, and domestic violence go hand in hand. And if you've got all 3 of those things going on, it's not that unusual to have a parent incarcerated. So this just hits home how prevalent the trauma is for our children. And in my world, I kept thinking, you know, I've done this work for 20 years. Hopefully we can get ahead of this, and we just can't get ahead of this anymore. And it finally dawned on me, the reason we can is our drug endangered children are having drug endangered children. So these ACEs are just getting passed down from generation to generation. There's no place for them to go to see any other way of being. Their whole life, they have never felt safe in their own skin or their environment. They don't know how to form healthy attachments. They don't know how to act, and they don't know how to behave. And there's no place for them to go to see it any differently. It's this way at mom's house, it's this way at grandma's house, it's this way at their aunt and uncle's house, so it's the only way they know. And we have got to find some way to intervene with these kids. When we talk about the drug crisis, I have opioid crisis here, but I need to just change it to the drug crisis because we have switched over to the crystal meth problem. Not that we don't still have the opioid heroin problem, but crystal meth is very prevalent here. If you talk about the drug crisis to law enforcement, they're going to think of drugs and arrest. If you talk about it to emergency medical services, they're going to think of overdoses and Narcan. You know, the criteria for getting into treatment is being alive, and that's their job, is to keep those folks alive. In public health, if you talk about the drug crisis, they think of increases in HIV and hepatitis B and C. If you talk about the drug crisis to CPS, they think of removal of kids and not one more place to put them. But what people aren't understanding, this drug crisis is just blowing up our school system. And you might think, well, it's not my kid that's disruptive in the class, but your kid is sitting next to a kid who is disrupting the class, and the teachers and the staff are spending all their time redirecting all that behavior. So for the purposes of this discussion, this trauma is turning off the learning switch. We have got to figure out some way to get that learning switch turned back on. And that is what Handle with Care is all about. If we can't get those kids in the classroom ready to learn and learning, you know, we have more suspensions, expulsions, increased dropout rates, higher rates of school absences. That's our biggest problem, just getting the kids into the classroom. But can you all hear me? I'm hearing some feedback. Mark, can you all hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I'm just trying to figure out where that is so I can.
Okay, thank you, sir. So it's this, if we can't get them in school and graduating, we're all going to deal with them in the long term. You know, it will come back to us. There's going to be long-term use of health, behavioral health, correctional, and social services, among other things. But we have got to deal with this problem. We've got to get them through school. Let's see if this video will play for y'all. This is a quick 2-minute video that'll set the stage for how Handle with Care is used. Let's see.
Now to a story just developing. A Johnson County mother is in the hospital after she was attacked.
And her own children called 911 while hiding inside a closet. We just got that phone call. 24-hour News 8's Daniel Miller is live in the newsroom working on this story out of New Whiteland. Daniel.
Yeah, that's right, Eric and Debbie. We just received the 911 call from New Whiteland police about this attack. We can tell you that this mother was severely beaten inside her home last night, and her children witnessed the attack. We can tell you police arrested a person in this case. It's the woman's husband, and here's his picture right here, 33-year-old Timothy Brown. Police arrested him on the scene. Now, take a listen to the 911 call one of the kids made to police.
911, what is your emergency? Help me, help me, help me. What's wrong? My dad is hurting my mommy.
As you can imagine, kids terrified. As you said, Debbie, the kids were actually in the closet during this attack. Of course, we're working on this developing story, and as soon as we get more information about it, we will bring it to you. But we can tell you that the mother is at Methodist Hospital. Her condition is not known. We'll send it back to you.
So odds are, where is this child the next day? And you know, the odds are they're in school, and they probably don't have their homework, and they're probably bombing a test. They might be tired, hungry, acting out, but whatever is going on, they're probably not learning. And what are the teachers and staff doing? They're probably very frustrated because this is a chronic situation. And they might be asking that child, where's your homework? Why can't you do the simplest thing that I ask you to do? Not realizing what this child has been going through. And what we do is just add trauma on top of trauma. So this is, for all these slides leading up to this is all setting the stage why Handle with Care is so needed and so important. It's a program aimed at ensuring that children who are exposed to crime, violence, and abuse receive appropriate intervention so they can succeed to the very best of their ability. Because we know, research tells us that trauma undermines a child's ability to learn, to form relationships, and to function appropriately in the classroom. So Handle with Care is about children being able to focus, behave appropriately, and learn. We started this project in 2011, but just setting the stage for all this, there was a big survey in 2009 that found that 60% of children had been exposed to crime, violence, and abuse in their home schools and communities, and 40% were direct victims of 2 or more violent acts. So that kind of set off a chain of events. Attorney General launched the Defending Childhood Initiative. At that time and to this day, I'm a Children's Justice Act grant recipient, and I have a task force set up that looks at the investigation, prosecution, and resolution of child abuse cases. We want to respond better, faster, we want better outcomes for kids, and we want to do it in a way that doesn't cause further harm. So I already had a task force set up, and my friend Tracy at the U.S. Attorney's Office called me and said, can we can we develop a subcommittee within our task force and look at this problem of children's exposure to crime, violence, and abuse, and figure out what we can do in West Virginia to help those kids? So that's what we did. We already had the task force in place. We formed a subcommittee. We looked at defending childhood initiatives all over the country. We picked parts, we kind of picked them apart and just picked the parts we needed for our program. We decided to call it Handle with Care. And so it worked. So in 2012, after we developed it, we spent months running it by all the lawyers, all the bosses, all the agency heads, all the community organizations, and everyone told us what we could and couldn't do. You can't do this because it violates one of the partners' policy. You can't do this because it violates confidentiality. You can't do this because it might jeopardize victim safety. You can't do this because, you know, I said you can't do this. So we were left with 3 words, handle with care. And we decided we could do it with just 3 words. So we decided we needed to pilot it because it worked in our head, but would it work in the field? And so we picked a place to pilot it, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, and realized very quickly that everybody loved this program. It was really, really smart. It really helped these kids. It didn't cost any money, and we needed to launch it statewide. So in 2015, we moved to the state police because we don't have a program without law enforcement. We needed to be in a law enforcement agency to launch it statewide, and the colonel at the state police said, come on over and we'll help you do this. So between April of 2015 and December 12th of 2018, we had been to every one of our 55 counties at least one time to have a stakeholder meeting. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like at the very end of this presentation. And then now we are probably in 35 different states across the country, and we are also in certain areas in Pennsylvania, and I have some contacts here if you would like to hear who I've already been contacted participating with, if you all need to know that. But Handle with Care has caught on all over the country. You have to remember that, you know, kids that can't keep up in school and can't do well, they often just give up, and if they're skipping school, they start doing things they probably shouldn't do, and oftentimes end up meeting law enforcement. What the Handle with Care intervention does differently is this. Law enforcement, when they're at the scene in the past, if there was a kid that needed to have a mandated report made on them, the law enforcement officer would make that mandated report. And so that child would be identified and got services, but most of the children don't meet that criteria for a mandated report. They're just there. They were never identified. They never got services. No one ever understood what was going on, and they never got any help. So what we're trying to do now is we just ask law enforcement. We say, law enforcement, if you're at the scene and there's children present, those are the kids most at risk. So please just get their name, age, and school they go to. And let's get that information over to the school before the start of the next school day. And so that's the first part of Handle with Care, is that simple notification from law enforcement. But that's only one part of Handle with Care. It's a 3-part process. Handle with Care is, you have to have all 3 of these in place. So the notice gets to the school preps trauma-sensitive supports for these kids, and then mental health providers partner for on-site therapy. So we want therapists on-site for the kids to be able to have access to the services. So when you think of Handle with Care, remember it's all 3 of these. And under our on our website, handlewithcarewv.org, if you'll go to the model of fidelity, you'll see exactly how this is all laid out and what you need to follow to effectively do this program. So when we piloted it, we picked the Charleston Police Department. They had 168 law enforcement officers on that force. They're in the city of Charleston. We picked Mary Snow Elementary because that's the busiest law enforcement car in Charleston. We created this handy dandy form. It's under Handle with Care for Law Enforcement on our website. And the form says if you're getting the notice on this child, they've been on the scene of a police incident in the last 24 hours, might exhibit academic, emotional, or behavioral problems. Please handle with care. The trick to handle with care, and this is something y'all really need to think about in your communities, is how are you going to get this notice from the law enforcement officer up through the chain of command in his department and over to the school before the start of the next school day. Every county does it differently. Every state does it differently. States and counties are laid out differently. We're lucky because we have one county and one school district in each county. There are a lot of places, and I'm not sure how y'all are laid out, but there are several school districts within that county. This works the best if it's easy. If it's not easy, it's not going to work. So you got to figure out the easiest way to make this process happen. I want to talk about that just a little bit. But before I do, I told you we picked the busiest police car, and that's how we figured out which school we were going to pilot it in. But we actually did crime mapping in Charleston and looked at all of these crimes. And what you're looking at now is burglaries from 2010 to 2012 when we were developing this. And I think if you look down near the bottom, you see that little blue dot. That little blue dot is our school, and on the left you'll see a bridge over the river, and on the right you'll see a bridge over the river. So our school, where you see red dots, that's calls and reports of crime. So out to green where there's no reports. But what you have to understand is from one bridge to the other bridge is only 2 miles. That looks like a big space, but it's not. It's a little space. It's 2 miles. But you can see the crime in this community around this little school. Child abuse reports, domestic violence. When domestic violence is your busiest call for handle with care. Malicious woundings almost on top of the school. Robberies more towards our Kroger's and the Civic Center. Wanton endangerments almost on top of the school, and murders. We have about 8 to 12 a year. But you can see all this crime on top of our little school, so you can imagine what the children hear 24/7. It's sirens, and it's ambulances and gunshots. But that's the soundtrack in their head, and then they walk into school and they're expected to sit down, behave, and learn. So when we started this, we're building this plane as we're flying it. When we started this, we started telling the officers, if you think this child has been exposed, is traumatized from the exposure from the situation, send a handle with care notice. We quickly figured out that wasn't the way to do it. What affects one child might not affect another child. Also, law enforcement, they're used to really big deals. And so sometimes they think it has to be a really big deal to affect this kid, when in fact, just their presence sometimes can be upsetting. So we've gone to, just get the name, age, and school of every kid. It's not our place to judge trauma. It's not our place to do that. Just send them on all the kids and get it over to the school. You're just sending 3 words, handle with care, and let's let the school work to sort that out for the children who need some help and extra supports. But before we did that, they asked us for a list of things, that might cause trauma to these kids. So we did give them that list. At first we said, if you think they're traumatized, then we gave them this list. Then this list is still pretty helpful. And a big one on here is overdose of family members, and we've expanded to EMS because of all the children witnessing those overdoses. But basically, we just tell them all, if you're at the scene, children present, get the names of all the kids that are present and send it over. People send it over. Law enforcement agencies do it all different ways. They can do email, they can do cell phones, text, they can go through dispatch. The easiest way, well, if you're a small community, a lot of times everyone knows everyone, and the principal, the law enforcement officer has the principal's cell phone number. In larger areas, it gets more complicated, but in the larger areas, dispatch works really well. If you can develop the process where those reports are checked by law enforcement, where there's kids present, then you have a point person that can get it to dispatch, and dispatch is up 24/7. They have the contact with the school system and can get that over there 24/7. So it just depends on how your community is laid out with the best way to send that notice. When we piloted this, August 2013 to February 2016, I think that's supposed to be 15. I don't know how that turned into 16. We had 580 incidences affecting 1,056 kids. And you've got to realize that's 1,056 kids that would never, ever have been identified and never gotten any services. Another part of our program is building relationships. Because when do kids see law enforcement? Usually when something really bad is going on. So Lieutenant Napper at the police department asked his officers, just go to the schools and have lunch with them. Take your motorcycles, take your cars, go into the classroom, talk to them, let them see when nothing bad is going on. So a big part of Handle with Care is just changing the way those children see law enforcement. You got to remember it's only 3 words, and I've seen people's phones that are the person who forwards those Handle with Care notices, and you can see they say, do we know anything going on? What happened? But you have to understand, if we gave you that information, we wouldn't have a program. You can't do that. It's only 3 words, Handle with Care. Your business is helping that child learn. Your business is not about all the details of that family. Couple more things about the notice. It needs to arrive before the start of the next school day or as close thereafter as possible, because we want the school and staff to be able to be proactive instead of reactive. It's a need-to-know basis, only going to the teachers and staff that work with that child. It's not the whole school's business. It does not stay in a child's permanent record. The only time you save the Handle with Care notices is over the summer. You're probably not year-round school there. But over the summer when school's out, keep those notices coming, keep law enforcement in the habit of sending those notices. And then when school starts, the principal can take those notices to the teacher and say, FYI, you just need to know this is what's been going on, and then those notices go away. We include child care serving agencies because the younger the child is, the more lethal that environment is to that child. Internal Handle with Cares are very beneficial, and those have been going on in schools and agencies forever. You know, we have an informal way of doing that, but it's very helpful to continue on with that. The most important thing is it doesn't mean you approach the child. The last thing the kid wants is you to pounce on them, you know, the next day, first thing in the morning. What you are is a silent observer, informed about trauma, and prepared to provide supports that will help that child and avert a meltdown or whatever it is that might happen that day. You know, a little bit about trauma before we go further, and we all know trauma affects us all, and it affects us all differently. You can have a million definitions of it, but what I like to use is anything that overwhelms your ability to cope. That's what trauma is. If it's overwhelming you and you can't cope, you need some help, and you need some help pretty quick. It affects all people differently. It's a threat to your life and well-being. It can be a one-time shot. It can be chronic and ongoing, and safety has to be established. So for Handle with Care, when we piloted this program, we figured out, the school nurse compiled some stats for us, and 39% of the kids at our pilot school had these diagnoses: depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, oppositional defiant, conduct disorder, attachment disorder. 39% of these kids. And you know, you got to think, what percent of that is trauma that nobody dealt with? And what did they do? They labeled the kids, they gave them medication, but they never got to the root of the problem. So trauma is incredibly underreported and underdiagnosed. So the solution is a trauma-sensitive school/agency. These are respectful and safe environments where children can build positive relationships with adults and peers and learn to manage their emotions and behavioral responses. And you can see all those words that are in green, and for a lot of these kids, the words that are in green are not part of their home environment. This is new to them. This is something that they haven't been taught. You know, when kids come to school and they can't read, we help them read. If they can't do math, we help them learn math. And if they don't know how to behave, we punish them. That is not working for these kids. You cannot punish trauma. It doesn't work. And these kids are difficult. I realize that. but they see, you know, they're completely rewired to see the world as a very dangerous place. Even when there is no danger, they're so used to looking for it, they'll read it into a situation, and that can cause all kinds of aggression and defiance and withdrawal. So trauma-sensitive schools are supportive, predictable, and safe. And I love these three words when you deal with kids in the classroom: supportive, predictable, and safe. Safe, when I say safe, I don't mean safe at the bus stop. I mean safe with you. They can look in your eyes and see whether or not you're safe. They can see if you're aggravated with them, tired of them, if whatever, they can see that. They're geared to see that. So we have to put on the poker face and be as safe and nurturing and predictable as possible. And predictable is huge. They live in chaos, so they really need to kind of have an idea of what's coming and what the agenda looks like that day and what to expect. That's going to help them calm down. Traditional approaches don't work with these kids. If you don't do your work and turn it in, I'm going to give you a 0. Big deal. You know, they could be worried about where they're going to sleep that night, or how their parents, you know, a parent is doing. There are people right now going to school to learn how to teach children that do not exist, because the teachers are not getting this trauma work, these ACEs information in the classroom to go into the schools. Used to be 1 or 2 of the kids in the classroom, you know, had some problems. Now it's half the class. When we talk about trauma-sensitive schools and supports, there is no one-size-fits-all. There is no checkbox to go through to create this. But it's one thing it has to be is a whole school approach. It has to be the teachers and the bus drivers and the cooks and custodians and anyone the teacher talks to. So we want the whole school involved in this, so the kids are treated the same by all the staff at the school. This is an incredible support for teachers. Teachers love this, staff loves this, because it helps them be proactive instead of reactive. And all we're really doing, it's not rocket science, we're just changing our lens when we're looking at what's going on with the kids. We developed this program, and this is our go-to that helped us develop this program. The Massachusetts Advocates for Children, in partnership with Harvard Law School, has done the research and evaluation, and they've printed these 2 books called Helping Traumatized Children Learn. They're blueprints for educators for creating environments where kids can feel safe and learn. So Ann Eisner, the deputy director, is my go-to. Anytime I have a question, don't know how to answer it, I go to her. These books are free and downloadable. There's links on our website to it, so there's no cost involved. And we took these books and turned them into book studies that are on our website. And so schools, there's a tool there for schools to use with their staff to learn about trauma and how to create these trauma-sensitive rooms. So we really, really appreciate all the work they've done and their partnership with us in helping us to create our program. And they have seen this presentation. I've met these people. They love what we're doing. They said, you took all the research, all the work that we've done, and turned it into an application that anyone can use. So what do kids need? You know, it's Maslow hierarchy. First, they got to have food, sleep, clean clothes, right? Next, they need safe, predictable, supportive environments. They need to be able to connect with a caring adult. Once that's done, they need to be empowered. They need some self-confidence. They need to know that, you know, they can do this. Once that happens, they can learn. But we have to do the Maslow if we want them to learn. We have to get them ready to learn. Love this quote: when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos. This is so important with these kids. What kid is going to lean into a very upset, angry, yelling person? You know, put that poker face on and let them calm down and lean into you. Like I just went through this, but what the interventions look like. It could be healthy snacks. It could be the agenda on the board so they know exactly what's coming at them. It could be a little kid that asks you, can I use the phone? Can I use the phone? Can I use the phone? And you've gotten to handle care on them. Maybe they just need to hear the voice of someone they're worried about. And once they know they're okay, they can go back to the classroom and learn. Could be clean clothes. It could be connection with a caring adult or partnered with a buddy at school that day. At our pilot school, we did thumbs up, thumbs down, because teachers and staff are so busy running from one thing to the other. A lot of times it's hard to figure out how to get everything in, so that the kids that have frequent handle with cares, you know, the staff is working out, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm going to thumbs up you or thumbs down you, and if you need me, if you're having a bad day, do your thumbs down, and you're important to me, and I'm going to make time to check on you that day and spend time with you. Visiting the classrooms, we've already talked about. Therapy dogs. Paco is the dog. He lived in the library, and so that was a handle with bad care intervention when we started this, is for a child to be able to go calm down in the library, sit in a beanbag, read a book, and Paco would sit there with them. If you get a handle with care and a kid comes to school and they're asleep, send them to the nurse's office, let them sleep. After they get some rest, wake them up, feed them, and bring them back in the classroom. Why lose the whole day of instruction when you can meet the need the child has and then get them back in the classroom? You can postpone testing, you can retest, you can send a child to the counselor before you send them to any sort of a disciplinary measure to try to figure out what's at the root of this. I love these next two slides, and they were sent to me by someone from Pennsylvania, and I can't remember who, maybe they're in the audience today. But the school response without a handle with care intervention. Let's say you have a 5th grader comes to school disheveled, gets off track, but you can generally get him back on course. So you get a handle, he comes to school without a handle with care, and he has no homework, so he gets a 0. Falls asleep in class, he loses his recess. Agitated, so at lunch he got into a scuffle, which landed him in detention. They had a field trip around the corner in the afternoon at a park, but there was no one available to sign his permission slip, so he didn't get to go. He had to stay back in the library. Let's do the same scenario with a handle with care notice. So 5th grader, little disheveled, come to school. You've already got the handle with care. So when he walked into the classroom, he didn't have his homework, but the math teacher gave him extra time to do the homework and offered one-on-one help if needed. He fell asleep in class, so he went to the nurse's office to get some rest. He didn't get into a scuffle at lunch because he didn't have such a bad morning after going through a really tough night. And the teacher got phone permission, verbal permission over the phone from a family member, so he didn't have to miss out on the field trip. So that's how handle with care works. It's just very easy. It is never, ever a pass for bad behavior. It's just getting that child to produce what you need them to produce while accommodating the trauma that they are experiencing. If school interventions aren't enough, we want therapists to be on site. This is our therapy room at our pilot project. It used to be a little room with boxes and a microwave in it where people heated up their lunches. They cleaned it out. Well, the inmates at Mount Olive made all that furniture and created everything you see there for the kids, and said they never thought they could help a child from inside the prison. But we get really creative with community partners when we need them, and we really appreciate the inmates at Mount Olive helping us when we need that. It's so nice for the therapist to see the kids at school. Not only can they see the kids in their natural environment, they can see them interacting with other people, and the therapist can work with the school staff without divulging anything. They can just say, you know, if you see these behaviors, please give them an extra attaboy because we're working on these as well. So in summary, it identifies the kids most at risk. It provides teachers with a heads up to be proactive instead of reactive. It connects children with much needed mental health services. It strengthens and improves relationships in the community. One of my handle care coordinators in Morgan County, he's a PRO officer, he says, I talked to him recently, and he said, this program is so simple. It's hard for people to get their head around all the benefits that are involved when they implement it because it's so simple. But what people don't realize is handle with care starts conversations that people would otherwise never have had. It's just the nature of the way it works, and it just really strengthens and improves those relationships in the community. And thus improving academic, social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes for kids. That's our goal, is improving academic, social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. So everything I've talked about is leading up to helping that child succeed in the classroom. So we started this and, you know, went statewide in 2015, and 5 years later, it's in 30 to 35 different states. Where you see yellow, there's interest. Where there's purple, there's development, and where there's blue, there's active. But this has to be updated because it's way bigger than this now, but you can see it's spread all across the country. I even got an email from a law enforcement officer on an island off the coast of Australia asking if they had permission to start implementing Handle with Care. So it's just spread really far and wide, really, really fast. We do have a conference every year with a whole Handle with Care track. It's October 14th through the 16th, and it'll be on our website if anyone's interested. Last year we had 18 different states come. So in closing, success in school is success in life. So what we want is to help that child succeed that day to the best of their ability, so we can get them through the week, through the month, through the year, and get them to graduation, because that's their best shot. So that's the whole presentation I have for you. Oops. I thought I had a couple more slides on here. Does anyone have any questions so far? Mark, has anyone said anything in the chat?
Not that I saw. Let me double check again. I did share the PowerPoint on there for everybody, and then we'll actually post this presentation up on our website as well, if that's okay.
Cool.
And I guess I can open it up for questions. I do want to thank you for the very comprehensive and information that you provided to us. I guess I can start off with one of the questions that I think I had, and I don't know that I caught it if you said it.
Okay.
But if the police have an interaction with somebody in the evening, and even if it's a medical, just a traumatic event, do they notify anybody, like the parent or anybody, that, hey, we're going to notify the school about the Handle with Care?
We do not.
No, okay.
What we do on our website under Handle with Care for schools, at the very bottom you'll see a poster, and it says our school practices Handle with Care because we want your child to be safe, so they can feel safe, so they can learn. So this is just let me back up. When people, here's how we started doing this. When you want to implement Handle with Care, you need to go to your superintendent of your schools, your chief of police's, your mental health providers, and start the conversation with what you want to do. Get them on board, and then you're going to have a stakeholder meeting with all the players, and you can find that under Handle with Care, wv.org, and you'll go to starting a Handle with Care in my community. You'll see a letter of invitation and all the people that need to be at this stakeholder meeting. And I always invite the news to that. I always invite the press to that, because we want the news to get out there so people understand that the community is doing Handle with Care. It's no details will ever be given. It's only 3 words, and it's all about helping that child learn. So to answer your question, no, we don't actively just tell everyone that. We have that poster on the website, so schools can post that on their wall, or they can print it off and send it, you know, at the beginning of year in the child's book bag, so they understand that they're a Handle with Care school. Does that help?
Andrea,
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Hi, this is Larissa Kimmel from Carbon, Monroe, and Pike counties. I have the pleasure of attending the Handle with Care conference this past October and really gained a lot from it. So to follow up with Mark's question, that came up in our counties as well, asking if individual caregivers or parents are informed about the Handle with Care notice. So I understand that that's not a practice that you're using in West Virginia. In Blair County, they are doing well. I'm not sure if Lori is on the call, and they hand out a teddy bear or something like that to a child, or the police hand that out. And I was wondering if something like that would draw more questions from parents and caregivers, or does that really just seem to be a comfort item that is allowed to be on scene?
I don't know how to answer that. So you're saying that if the Handle with Care kids are given a teddy bear,
Mm-hmm.
are all kids given a teddy bear, whether they're a Handle with Care kid or not?
I'm not sure.
And that's kind of a redundant question because we say all kids should receive a Handle. I don't want anything to identify a kid as a Handle with Care kid.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, and I know that's what Massachusetts Advocates for Children would say. This is really not, you know, the only people that need to know are the people that work with that child.
Mm-hmm.
For years, law enforcement agencies, a lot of them have had trunks full of teddy bears to give to kids at the scene. That is a practice that's been going on. Handle with Care is a practice. Are these two overlapping? You know, I can't get my head around. I don't have enough information to figure that out, but I do think that you should never do anything that identifies a kid as a Handle with Care kid to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great feedback. And along those lines, have you had the experience where caregivers are then approaching the schools or law enforcement to find out more about Handle with Care?
I don't have that kind of feedback. I did get feedback from a friend of mine who had a friend going through a divorce, and law enforcement's called to the ex's house one night, and they said they were so thankful that Handle with Care is in place because, you know, they had no control over what was happening with their child at their spouse's house, but they were glad that the school would be able to wrap their arms around that child and give that child extra supports when they got there. For the most part, everyone loves Handle with Care. And in the beginning, I told my friend Tracy, I said, Tracy, I don't see how any parent is going to allow their children to see a therapist on site at the school. And she said, you are so wrong. Even the parents that aren't the best parents want what's best for their children, and they're going to access any supports that are there to help their child. And she's right. She's right.
Thank you. And one other question that came up, how did you engage with the state police in your area?
Well, we were very lucky. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District at the time helped us launch Handle with Care and had great relationships with all law enforcement. So he helped us with that.
Okay. In Pennsylvania, one thing that came up as we started talking about Handle with Care is that at least one perspective from the state police is that they felt that the program would open up that violation of sharing confidential information. So
right.
How do you, and I know you explained that a little bit earlier, but I wanted to see if you had a little bit more detail as to how that question was answered in your state.
How we answered it, and again, we were led by the chief law enforcement officer of the state. How we answer it is we are giving absolutely no information about what's going on at the scene. None. All we're doing is saying Handle with Care. Police reports are public record. If they took the police report and recorded whatever went on at the scene, you would see those children as witnesses at the scene. You would pick up the newspaper 2 days later. We have a thing in our paper that says this police officer was called to this address with this crime. You know, they're giving more information than we're giving because we are giving no information.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome. And Larissa, I see I've talked to you before. You're one of my contacts on my contacts for Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Hey, is Tracy Frederick on this call? Tracy?
No.
Or Beth Tomlinson? And then I have Larissa Lorraine from Fayette County and Lori Crane from Holiday.
I know Lori was on.
Okay. Then Catherine from Pittsburgh. Morgan from, she's an intern with Project Launch. Beth Tomlinson from Allentown. So we've had quite a few people call from your state.
Yeah. And I know we had an online question or chat
Okay.
question. What's the best practice in terms of who is sending the handle with care notice? For example, if emergency management services is involved, for example, and the LAO is there as well, so, or the law enforcement officer. So does it always just come from the law enforcement officer, or could it come from the emergency management services?
It absolutely can come from the EMS, and we are expanding to include EMS. Because of all those overdoses, we also want to expand with probation. It's in the fire department in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The fire department led the charge to implement handle with care. A lot of times they're there together. So we just, whoever it is, you know, like I said, any of those first responders, we want to send it, and the easier it is, the better. In half the counties in West Virginia, we have 911 as the main point of contact or the backup point of contact. We try to keep, I have one contact in every county that volunteers to watch handle with care, and we have a cell phone number and an email for that person 24/7. So we can find a kid 24/7 in every county in West Virginia. But it's very, very helpful. This list that I have with that information on it, I try to get it to all the dispatches throughout West Virginia and in the hands of all law enforcement. Because a lot of times, you know, they move from county, you'll get a handle with care in this county, but the kid will end up in a county, you know, 2 or 3 counties away. You need to know how to forward that and how to get it there.
Thank you. I think there was one other call, a question from let's see here. Can a parent request it?
Sure, and they've been doing that all along for years. A lot of parents, after something happens, will go to the school and say, you know, we lost, little Johnny lost their grandmother over the weekend, and might be, you know, is pretty sad, so please just handle my child with care. So that's been going on all along, but nothing is stopping a parent from doing handle with care on their kid.
So I think what you're talking about beyond just the messaging with the police, this is also, I guess, especially in Pennsylvania, we have 67 counties, and each county has anywhere from 3 to 20 some school districts, and then we have actually independent police and then state police. So I think it becomes a little bit at times maybe challenging. So I think what you're really talking about is really a true community messaging piece. That if you're doing this, it really is about the community.
It is. It is. It's changing the lens. It's changing the lens. Not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. I'm going to help you. You know, it's okay. You're safe. Let's do what we need to do to help you. It's just changing the lens, and it's everyone participating in it, in that changing of the lens.
I heard somebody.
I heard him too.
Hi, it's Colleen. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Andrea, what are some of the roadblocks or barriers that you know of that could kind of give us a heads up on?
Okay, law enforcement, it's hard to get them in the habit of doing this, and they don't want to do one more extra thing, one more piece of paperwork. They get bombarded with this request all the time. What they have to understand is that their handle with care notice is not going down a black hole. You know, give them some feedback. Let them know, thank you so much. This was so helpful. Just get that feedback to them so they understand just how significant it is to get that notice and what you're doing on the back end. That's one. Number two is you're going to run into some teachers and staff that say, this is not my job. I am not here to baby these children. I'm here to teach these children. So it's going to take a while for some teachers to understand. Like I said, you can't bloom until you Maslow. You know, those basic needs have to be met. That child has to feel safe. The best way to do that is connection with a caring adult. If you can simply start that process, your children are going to calm down and they are going to learn. Those are the two biggest roadblocks. And again, the third, it's not a roadblock, it's just what you really got to think through is how that notice is going to work in your community.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about too. I know when we spoke, you gave some suggestions, but could you share some what other counties do?
For instance, Work County has 4 schools and the superintendent knows everybody. So everybody has her cell phone number. You know what I mean? It's as simple as sending that over. In Kanawha County, where we piloted this, when we started this, all law enforcement officers actually did the research and got the email addresses of all the principals. But as that evolved, they also started copying the lead school counselor, John Duffy. The lead school counselor was copied on every Handle with Care notice. And so after a while, everyone realized you could just send it to John Duffy and he could get it to any school in West Virginia. That evolved farther where the superintendent asked John for all those Handle with Care notices, and the superintendent actually follows up every notice by calling the principal to say, what kind of supports did you provide for that child today? A lot of the counties go, I love dispatch. I love to have, you know, as few points as you can. So I love the fact that my Handle with Care coordinator in a certain county, the email and the cell phone number is at dispatch, and all law enforcement has to do after, you know, being at the scene is get that information to dispatch, and they send it off to the point person, like the superintendent for that county, and they get it to the principal. Does that help? Some people actually, the form I told you about, you know, if you get this notice on little Johnny, that means some people actually print that off, fill it out, take a picture of it with their cell phone and email it. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do this.
Do they do a lot of work with school resource officers? Are they a conduit for schools?
Oh yeah, the school resource officers we use a lot in our junior high and high schools. And you know, they have usually access to all the police reports in a very timely way. And they also have great relationships with their kids. So a lot of my Handle with Care coordinators are actually PRO officers in the schools.
So looking at the time, I know that we are at 11, and that's when we were scheduled to. So I do want to make sure that we are monitoring that. Was there any additional questions or thoughts, or did anybody need to stay on? I guess I want to leave that up to the group and make sure that we are monitoring the time and also the availability for everybody.
Mark, is someone trying to ask a question?
Oh, no, I think that was in my background of my mic.
Okay. Mark, you are a fabulous Zoom coordinator. I just want to thank you so much. You were really, really helpful. I'm not all that comfortable with Zoom, but you made this really easy, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and thank you very much.
Colleen,
well, thank you. No, this is great. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. And I really encourage, I did send the link of your website to everyone because that is a wealth of information and it's pretty much turnkey in the way you have it set up. So it's really very impressive.
Well, Colleen, I'm glad you brought that up because we are getting ready to update our website. If you go to our website and go to the very bottom of the homepage, have you seen that flowchart, Colleen?
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
We're going to turn that into an interactive learning and education library where the flowchart will be there, but like if you're, whatever your role is in Handle with Care, you can immediately go to a color-coded icon, and when you click on it, up will pop a video for training and resources that you can use in your field. So I'm very, very excited about that. I think that'll be done this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Also, have y'all seen our website, but have you seen Handle with Care Michigan or Handle with Care Maryland or Handle with Care Massachusetts website?
I don't believe I have.
It's our website personalized for their state. When people started doing Handle with Care every place, it worried me that they didn't understand that it was more than just a notice, right?
Mhm.
It's not okay to identify a child and not be prepared to do something about it. So it made me really nervous to think that they didn't understand the whole program. So for people that I built relationships with out of state and I knew they really, really understood the program, I offered the template. I offered access to the template so they could meet with the developer and work it out between them to have it personalized to their state. So all the work we've done, all the research we've done, every tool we have created, once we do it, it populates all the other websites. So no matter where you are in the country, you're getting the same message. And to me, that will help with the model of fidelity.
Great. All right.
Well, thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. Mark, thanks for helping to coordinate this. And I thank you for all those who joined us today. I hope you found this helpful.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you all very much, and we'll get this information out to everybody as we kind of pull it together.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.